Good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning. Thank you. That's good. And we know that you at home are also enthusiastically greeting us. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her. And we are very glad to welcome you this morning to our service. And we are particularly excited to have some guests speaking with us this morning, which you'll hear from in just a little while. For those of you visiting this congregation, we are so glad that you are here. We hope that you've had an opportunity to fill out either a visitor's card at the end of our down at our visitors table, or online if you're visiting us online. Next month, we'll have our Connecting You and MDUUC class for those of you who have questions you want to ask or things you want to learn about who we are and what we care about. And the first Sunday of each month, we have a chance for people who are ready to make the commitments of membership to join the church. We have a lot going on, and I want to mention just a couple things. If you missed our forum on the supervisor's race in Contra Costa County, it is available as a recording. We hope to get that out to you later today, along with other resources in Voters Edge, which are all bipartisan forums that allow us to exercise our democratic rights with purpose and intention. This Wednesday, we'll have a joyful gathering of Vespers with a few of our UUUks as our musical guests. So if you want something that's really joyful, please come and join us for Vespers this week at 6:30. We will also, on Friday, be offering a special showing of the award-winning movie Coda on campus on Friday evening. It's a chance for us to watch the movie together and then maybe have a brief discussion about it, because it's a really wonderful film and very much a part of our Widening the Circle commitments this year to accessibility. Please register by Thursday if you plan to attend. Please go to our website, www.mduuc.org, if you're interested in learning more about what's happening. There are always many things going on, and that's a great way to find out what we're doing together here. Please contact me or Intern Minister Michael Macias if you're interested in a listening ear or financial support. Asking is a gift you give to our community, and welcome to this beloved community.
Good morning. My name is Mark David Watanabe. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm a member of your Board of Trustees. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming faith community, and we begin our services by reading our mission together. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. Welcome to our service. We are so glad to have you with us and hope you are keeping safe. Speaking of which, new guidance from the CDC and Contra Costa County is now recommending indoor masking again. Look forward to an update to our policies in response to that ever-changing COVID landscape. Thank you for your patience and understanding. It really is a high priority to keep everyone as safe as possible here. We are still trying to meet our pledge drive goals, which allows us to keep this year's budget with no cost of living increase for our wonderful staff. Please join us for our forum this afternoon after the service at 12, where we will talk more about the budget we will adopt on June 5th. If you are a member and are unable to join us in person or on Zoom for the annual meeting on June 5th, you can contact the church this week for an absentee ballot. Or if you catch me after the service, I'll hang around and I'll try to scrounge one up for you. Absentee ballots must be returned to the church before Friday, June 3rd. Thank you for being here and for your generosity. and welcome. It's good to be together.
In the light of that news that we are once again in a little bit of an increased risk for our COVID, we are going to invite you to do the dance of greeting one another using the elbow bumps and the other forms of salutation. I know you can do it. Let's go for it.
I was just making.
Good morning. I love this quote. There is a universal truth I have found in my work. Everybody longs to be loved. And the greatest thing we can do is let somebody know they are loved and that they are capable of loving. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
All the things to adjust to. Good morning. I'd like to invite everyone who is young or young at heart to join me up here this morning. While folks are coming forward, my name is Michael Macias. My pronouns are they and them, and I serve this congregation as the intern minister. I also want to invite up who is already here, my colleague Indigo Lewis, who is our director of Lifespan Religious Education.
Hi, Michael.
Good morning, Indigo.
Nice to see you and everyone here. So I brought these hearts that you requested. Is this what you were looking for?
They look fantastic. I'm wondering if anyone up front would be interested in helping us with our heart activity. Oh, I see a hand. Great. I see several hands.
Hold up your hand if you want a heart.
Make sure you keep one for yourself, Indigo. Now, I think we can all agree that our hearts are tender things, but what happens when they experience the opposite of tenderness? Let's find out by taking our paper hearts, and I first want you to whisper something mean to your heart. Like that. Maybe you tell them that you hate their shape. Maybe you tell them that paper is yucky and they're so yucky. Just whisper quietly, and when you're done, crumple your heart into a small ball.
I don't like you. You irritate me this morning. Okay.
Michael, am I doing it right? Is it like this?
Just like that.
Okay.
Does everyone have a crumpled heart in their hand? Oh, I see them. Okay, now we're gonna put that crumpled heart on the floor and get up and step on it.
Are you sure about this?
I'm positive, trust me. Feel free to flip it over and step on the other side too.
Okay, this feels really awkward and sad. I'm feeling kind of bad for my heart. What should I do now?
Glad you asked. Well, first, I invite everyone to sit back down. Oh, you're already there. So good. Except Indigo, who's also there. Now I'd like to have you and everyone apologize to your heart. Say you didn't mean to be so thoughtless. You really didn't know what came over you, and could they please forgive you? I didn't mean to say those mean words. I'm really, really, really sorry.
I'm really, really, really sorry, Heart. I didn't mean to say those mean words to you. I feel really bad. I feel really bad. I'm so sorry to my heart.
Okay, that was good. Now it's time to uncrumple your hearts and smooth them out.
Okay. It's really crumpled.
Indigo, is there anything that you notice about your heart now that it's all smoothed out?
Well, I'm not sure it's really all smoothed out. I'm noticing that there are a lot of crumple lines on my heart. And I'm noticing it's a little dirty too because I stepped on it. Not once, but twice.
Do you think Indigo's heart will ever be like it was originally? Oh, do you? No. What about your heart that you're holding? Will it ever be the same? Indigo, is there anything you'd like to share about our hearts?
Well, that was a great question, Michael, because I don't think my heart is going to be the same. It is crumpled, a little bit crumpled, and a little bit dirtier than it was when we started. And I want to say that this heart activity was really a demonstration this morning of the impact that unkind words and actions can have on all of us. So every time a person abuses, belittles, talks behind someone's back, bullies, is mean, writes unkind things on social media, maybe inconsiderate with their questions, they're responsible for adding a crinkle to someone's heart. And even though you may apologize later and say you're really, really, really sorry, that person's heart is still going to have that crinkle on it. And yeah, it may fade over time, but it won't quite be the same. There's always going to be a small scar on it. Now, the good news is, because that's kind of the sad news, but the good news is that we all have the ability and the responsibility to care for each other and for each other's feelings by paying attention to our words and our actions that we use with one another. Pretty simple. Paying attention to our words and our actions that we use with one another. So now I'd like everyone to take their tender hearts. You can keep working on smoothing it. And I'm going to invite everyone to join us in singing our children and youth out to their activities this morning. What's that?
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face, with a kindness that you burn, like your heart till you return.
As Michael shared with you earlier, my name is Indigo Lewis. I serve this congregation as the Director for Lifespan Religious Education. My pronouns are she and her. So, the puzzle box of parenting. What a great title for today's service. For me, it brought to mind that Rubik's Cube, where every turn of the six-sided block pulls together some new desired constellation of colors. But just as often, it disrupts whatever pattern you have going on the reverse side. So like parenting, it is a practice in patience and unexpected outcomes. I find it interesting that parenting, an activity that's been going on for millennia, thousands of years, is fairly universal in its joy. That deep and powerful awe of being a guide and companion to another's growth as a human. In my book, this is as close a walk to the universal divine that we get. But I was thinking about the challenges of parenting, and they seem to be remarkably unique to their moment in time, the time that we are actively parenting young children and youth. And I have a very clear memory of the time a family friend of ours, so proud to have the brand new first generation iPhone. And he put it in my 10-year-old's hand. And I saw something I hadn't seen before, and it was just excitement and desire just wash across my child's face. What I didn't know at that moment was that such a small device would have such an enormous impact on families and the act of parenting. The explosion of access to the internet, social media, instant communication, and decrease in privacy over the past 15 years is, at best, a chronic parenting headache of time and attention management. In reality, it has deeply complicated how we experience relationships and the transmission of values. In my family, the advent of smartphones and our parenting decision to make church attendance a priority were not directly linked, but the need for an extended community, one invested in us and our family, and that helped articulate and reinforce our family values, felt essential. As a longtime religious educator, I've heard the same story from countless other parents, that making the commitment to this church and this faith is about community, and it's about values. Indeed, our congregational life together is a place sought out by parents for help in meeting the challenges of parenting in this particular time. So today we get to hear from a group of parents and grandparents, their experiences of the joys and struggles that are touching their families. And as we teach in our RE classes, we share joys so that we can all celebrate together with you. And we share sorrows or struggles so that you don't have to carry it alone. This is relationship in action. Let us worship together.
We invite you to rise in body or spirit and sing together our opening song, Bright Morning Stars. Bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising. Day is already in my soul. Oh, where are
This is the time in our service where we take into the collective heart of this congregation those joys and sorrows that are too large to hold alone. I'm asking Michael to light a candle of concern for our member, Marilyn King, who was recently diagnosed with a post-COVID heart condition. And I'm asking Michael also to light a candle, unless a member of the 510 Nation would like to light that candle. This is on behalf of MDUUC's 510 Nation, which if you don't know what that is, those are our members in Oakland. They're lighting a candle of light and love for our member Laura Ransom and her out-of-state siblings who gathered in Walnut Creek last week to accompany their mother Emily through her final days. Emily, who is a long-standing member of the First Unitarian Church of Oakland, passed away this morning. Thank you, Mark. Yvonne Shoemaker-Strajek asked that we light a candle of joy to welcome her husband Barry's second great-grandson, August Patrick Strajek. Eileen Sujata is asking that we light a candle of concern for her partner, John, who recently suffered a heart attack. John is recovering. Daniel Zwickel is asking that we light a candle this morning. Daniel writes, "The music community recently lost one of its champions, classical guitarist, composer, and owner of one of the few remaining independent music stores, Sam Baratel of County Wood Music." Thank you, Daniel. Daniel's over here. And Ron Annan is lighting a candle of joy that his son, Lucas Canestrana Annan, has decided to attend Loyola Marymount University, LMU, in the fall to study engineering. We are happy for him, but certainly will miss having him around the house. Best of luck on your college adventure, Lucas. And I'm asking Michael to light 2 final candles. The first represents all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our collective heart, and a gentle reminder with the second candle that we are the keepers of love and justice makers in this one imperfect and essential world.
We invite you to sing together our meditation. We are
that's born of morning star rises and sings to the universe. Who we are, for each child that's born a morning star rises and sings to the universe. Who we
we have come together to explore what it means to be a parent in this time. Let us be reminded that being a parent is as beautiful and joyful as it is difficult and messy. In this, we recognize that despite our role and societal expectations, parents are people, susceptible to knee-jerk reactions, anger, and fear that make a perfect dynamic nearly impossible. Still, we remain grounded in a love that carries us through the highs and lows of life. And in this evolving story, the past is distant and the future remains unknown. This morning, I invite us into the deep ask of prayer to bless all that was, all that is, and all that remains to be. Spirit of love and life, God by any name, give strength to the parent who provides for any and every child. Bless their works. Grant patience and understanding to the parent who listens with an open heart and an open mind to the wonders, fears, and musings of a child's experience. Bless them with wisdom. Fill with courage the parent who protects a child's mind, heart, and spirit. Bless them with the resiliency necessary to meet the shadows of the world. Steady the parent who helps a child navigate and explore new experiences as they seek all the beauty and magic that the universe holds. Bless their journey. Provide the space for each parent to nourish their mind, body, and spirit. May they be reminded, no matter where they are or how life unfolds, that there is a profound love within each of us and within this community that holds you. May they always show up as their authentic selves, and as parents, may you never lose your sense of wonder. And on this journey, may you be reminded that this sacred space is and always will be a safe home for you. And may your spirits continue to burn bright. May all that you do and all that you are as parents be blessed. Amen. Ashe. May it be so.
One, two, three.
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by and know. Become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. And teach your children well. Their father's help did slowly go by. And read them on your knees, the one they picked, the one you'll know by. told you you would cry. So just look at them and sigh, and know they love you. And you of tender years can't know the fears, and your elders grew by. And so please tell them they sing the truth before they can live and teach your parents well. Their children's hell will slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams. The one they fix, the one they go by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry. So just look at them and sigh, and know they love you.
Good morning. I'm Ron Annan, a member of your Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are he and him. You know, while it's natural and tempting to look at the world through my own eyes, I often find it enlightening to look at life through the eyes of my children. It's not easy. They grew up in a world very different from my own. They always had internet, cell phones, PCs, car windows that roll down with a touch of a button, television sets with hundreds of channels. But they also grew up with gay marriage, pride celebrations. The Berlin Wall has always been a relic in a museum, and Martin Luther King Day has always been a federal holiday. But today they face a series of uncertain future and challenges. War and peace in Europe, questions of racial justice and racial awakening at home and resistance to it, and religions that still strive towards competition and exclusion rather than harmony, peace, and justice. And of course, the existential question of climate change. And so my son, Lucas, sometimes presses me on these issues. And I imagine him saying to me, "Dad, what kind of legacy is your generation leaving behind?" And I'm not sure exactly how I would respond, but I would hope I say something like this: "Son, I hope our legacy is you. My hope is that today we are building through this church community a community that can live better with each other and for each other, learning to love one another more deeply. My prayer is that in another generation, our children and our children's children will be the amazing legacy of the beloved community that we received from our parents and our ancestors and passed on to you." As you give your offering today in the basket or via the website at home, I ask you to reflect on the living legacy that we create today and every day, both in and for our children. May the ushers please come forward for the offering. Please join me now in dedicating our offering with the words on the screen. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
Between each of our reflections this morning, join us in singing this chorus. Open the window.
Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the sun fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in.
I'm Johanna McShane, she, her pronouns. I am the mother of Zach, who is at the moment 19 years old. Some of you know Zach, he's been around for a while. Young adulthood brings certain challenges and joys that I could talk to you about probably for eternity, given that that's the phase we're in. But what I really wanted to talk to you about was an overarching theme that I've grappled with throughout Zach's 19 years. So my first inkling of one of the biggest challenges that I'd face in raising Zach came at that ultrasound appointment. You know the one. The one where if you want to, you can find out the sex of your baby. Not one for surprises. I had always intended to find out the sex of the creature I was going to give birth to. I wanted a girl. I had helped raise 2 goddaughters. Most of my patients over the years had been girls. I happened to be a girl. I was so comfortable with girls, so familiar with them. I just knew I was supposed to have a girl. You can see where this is going. So off we went to that appointment, and there it was, clear as day on the ultrasound, that part of the anatomy that showed definitively that I was going to be giving birth to a boy. I cried. My then husband was very concerned. He didn't understand my reaction. Having a boy was his dream. He was very worried about his wife's strong and negative reaction to what he considered such joyful news. This was the first of many reminders, some subtle, others not so subtle, that Zach is exactly who Zach is in this world. My job was always going to be to see him exactly as he is and to help him remain exactly who he is as he grew up. How hard could that be, I thought? I'm a psychologist. I understand how things are supposed to work, and I'd helped raise 2 kids already. Yeah, well, none of that helped much when I had to admit to myself my disappointment that I wasn't going to have some magical child that would be a mini version of me, or that I'd long harbored fantasies of what my ideal child would be like, or my deep embarrassment that I even had those kinds of thoughts. Those can't be cool as a parent to have those thoughts. Then there were my fears about raising a child who was turning out to be quite different from me in myriad ways, and my abject terror that some kind of parenting chaos was about to ensue. I was afraid I wouldn't know how to parent Zach, that I wouldn't know what he needed or how to help him grow, that there'd be no guiding principles for me to follow, that I could potentially fail him miserably. But then over time, as I settled myself down, with a lot of work settling myself down, I began to see that there were patterns to how Zach was in the world, and they were remarkably internally consistent. He knows himself. He knows what he's doing. He acts from a place of congruence with who he is. Don't get me wrong, this didn't mean I always thought his decisions were great. Let me tell you, not always great. But it did mean that there was a pattern to them, that they made sense to him in ways that I could understand. And because of that, I could help him learn from the actions he took and the choices he made. It was turning out that there were, after all, guiding principles to parenting him, and they made themselves rather apparent when I could quiet myself down enough to watch and listen. The fundamental principle was to give him space to try out things, to learn and to experiment, and to continue to develop confidence in himself. And my role was, and still is, to observe him closely, to assess how he's doing, and to intervene only when he truly needs me to do so. When I stay quiet and I listen, I can very much appreciate who Zach is. I can see that he is much more fun, much stronger, and much more marvelous than any of my fantasies about some idealized child I might have ever were. I don't always get the parenting thing right. When I'm too tired, too stressed, anything, I find myself less able to stay quiet and listen to what is real for Zach. I become impatient and I try to do things my own way. This works out badly, as Zach is quite quick to point out. So then, after his usual chastising, which often includes bonking me over the head since he's about a foot taller than me now, I adjust and I return to being quiet and paying attention to who he is and what he needs. I resume my role as the person who is there to help him remain true to himself while he grows.
Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in.
Good morning. My name is Mary Kelly Persine, and I live in San Francisco with my husband Ian and my kids Zephyr and Annie. And we've been coming to MDUC for a little over 10 years now. So I wanted to thank Reverend Leslie for asking me to share a few reflections on Unitarian Universalism and parenting. The first thing I think about with that subject is the very recent and great example of the pandemic. And, pandemic was so hard on everyone. We were really privileged and fortunate to be able to all be at home together. I could work from home, and so could my husband, and my kids were on the computer for school. And so we were there to help each other, but it was just a hard time. And during that time, it was really, really valuable and important for us to be able to gather every Sunday for Sunday service, where we would repeatedly hear messages of hope and responsibility and community, and some encouraging messages by Reverend Leslie, who would repeatedly say, we can do this together. We can do this. We will make it. And I think for my kids to see that happening in a community environment that they knew really well was very important. And so that support for us as parents was critical. They really absorb that message. I think they understand the ties that bind and how to take care of each other. They still wear their masks. And I know they see that as a way to take care of themselves and their friends and to communicate that they care. I also wanted to just take a minute to talk about the 7 principles. Actually, the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all people, which has been very important for my kids. And I think particularly important for my trans child to understand the love and care and dignity and respect that they have in this congregation without question. So that principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all people, is one that I don't think they see demonstrated in much of our nation's political culture or our social divisions, which is really sad. It's a hard time in that way, particularly when they see the laws that are being passed to basically crush dissent and limit reproductive freedom and limit the choices of trans youth. It can be scary. And so, having those principles to return to, having that lens to think through, and particularly the first principle, is so important. One thing I've learned about parenting that I think Unitarian Universalism supports really well is that kids are rivers. They come from divinity, they flow through our lives as parents, and they flow along to their own lives and back to the divine, as we all must. And so I think that having those principles to help us kind of shape the river a little bit, even though you can't direct it, has been so helpful in communicating to them that they are people with rights and with agency and with brains, and that they can choose their own path in some really meaningful ways. Unitarian Universalism supports that, and I really appreciate it. I think in terms of what the congregation can do, continue to be a multi-generational, inclusive, representative, loving space, continue to ask the hard questions, and to remind ourselves that community is, not only unidirectional, like we all owe to our community. We take from our community what we need, and we participate in that web of which we are all a part. Kids don't hear you, actually. They don't hear what you say. but they sure see what you do. And so I want this congregation to continue to be that, to be a congregation that walks the walk, does what it means, and is unfailingly supportive of youth, which you are. And I appreciate that. So keep doing what you do, and thanks for listening.
Window children, open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the sun fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in.
Oops, things flying off. There we go. Thank you, Indigo and Michael and Ron, for words that spoke to my heart, and I'm sure the rest of us too. I'm David Stanley, grandfather to 3 small children. Not here today because afflicted by COVID. I'm also a father, a son, and a grandson. I want to talk about grandparenting in the time of COVID. When we became grandparents 11 years ago, I was determined to become a bigger presence in my grandchildren's lives than I had experienced both as child and as parent. Even now, I am sad that geographic separation and estrangement made my own grandparents distant strangers, and that even greater geographic distance isolated our children from their grandparents, uncles, aunts, and cousins. We raised our children without family support, and that grieves me, though it did drive us to seek out a supportive community that we found in our local UU fellowship 40 years ago. So it's been a great joy for me to have a close relationship with my grandchildren, thanks to their proximity and the gifts that retirement, good health, and financial security have afforded to me. I was very grateful that my son, and especially my daughter-in-law, allowed this. I'm skeptical that we would have ever allowed our fathers to pedal around town with our little ones on the back, or to spirit them off across the ocean to visit distant relatives. But our experience during COVID has, in a way, turned the tables and enabled us to feel the gratitude from our son and daughter-in-law for the relief that we have been able to offer during a time when our society reacted to COVID in a way that placed such burdens on families raising small children. The images of taped-off playgrounds, shuttered schools, museums, campgrounds, and churches remain raw and infuriating for me. The requirement that working parents had to turn their homes into workplaces and sit their young children in front of screens to receive remote learning was terribly isolating and burdensome. The months when grandparents were urged to isolate from contact with children were especially painful. The quickly emerging scientific understanding that children were not primary vectors, and the pleas from pediatricians that isolation was especially harmful for small children were drowned out by the plaintive appeals from the frail and the fearful, and the blasts of misinformation from malevolent trolls and cynical political opportunists. Exhausted and confused parents were left hanging by schools that offered only delivery of Chromebooks for toddlers and brown-bagged meals for the needy, followed by the even greater burden of so-called hybrid schools, when kids were neither in nor out of the classroom. It was a time when our assistance as grandparents became not just an opportunity for pleasant outings, storytelling, and treats, but a lifeline for our beleaguered families. What do we do without the many who had no such lifeline?
Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in.
Before I start my very brief remarks and appreciation, I want to thank our speakers today. Can we just join in thanking them? It is truly a time in which we need an entire village, and maybe two, to raise our children. I also want to take a moment and say thank you to our staff. We've had a very busy weekend here, and I meant to say this during Joys and Sorrows, and I did not. So please, think of the little crumpled hearts and be gentle with everyone you encounter today as we continue through our weekend. We have worked hard today, and particularly I want to ask you to be grateful and gentle with our own Tristan Thielman, who has just let us know that he will be leaving at the end of this month to go pursue his own new plan, which we are grateful for and very excited about, and also crumples our hearts a little bit. So please join me in thanking Tristan. We'll be thanking him over the next couple weeks. Last week I had the privilege of seeing my niece's high school concert. It was her last high school concert, and I was struck by how much it was like the others I had gone to see from her and from my own children, and also how much it was different. The singers were excellent, they were joyful, maybe a little bit more so because most of their sophomore and junior years had taken place in isolation. The seniors cried, as they do each year at my niece's school. Yet this year, 2 of them could not stop crying, could not control their tears. What it reminded me of was this, of how amazing this time is and how amazing our children and youth are, how amazing our families are, and also, at the same time, how much they are holding, how much they are struggling. Both of these statements are true like never before. We all know that parenting is something that never stops. In our community, I talk to parents in their 90s who talk to me about their concerns about their children and some of their decisions. In the Bay Area, many households remain multi-generational until the offspring are in their 30s or even 40s or even 50s because the devastating lack of affordable housing. And of special concern is how parenting those in K-12 has become so much harder than it was a few years ago. You can think COVID and screens and change and despair and exhaustion. But just take one thing. How much more information and how many more decisions our children have before them. Just the issue of gender identity alone, which affects so many in this community. I was struck by this as we sang 2 of the hymns in our hymnal that are about children, and both of them were not particularly gender inclusive. There's just so much change going on. So the spiritual needs of parents, I believe, are centered first on the very important need of us to be seen and to be heard and to be recognized. So I invite you to invoke the image of that heart that our amazing religious educator Indigo Lewis gave us, that crumpled heart, and just think of it as perhaps the heart of your own heart if you are a parent, or the heart of the parent that you most love, and everyone who's a parent but a parent of young children. That would be wonderful to just think of that. And if you're not a parent, to think of the parent that you're closest to. But maybe just put your hand on your own heart for a moment. And let us just think about how much it means to be a parent in these times and how much our support is needed. And because we are a faith that believes that faith and science can live together, I give you just a few moments of social science here in this service from the Pew Research Center, which shows that parents are unusually structured now, more unusually than ever before. Only 40% are being raised in households with both their biological parents, which may actually in many ways be a good thing. And yet it is a change because it means that those kinds of extended families that David talked about become so important. The Pew Research says this, and then there are the concerns and the challenges. When it comes to concerns about challenges their children may face, bullying and mental health issues such as anxiety and depression top the list. And this is important for all parents, but among parents of lower income and those who are from Black or Latinx families, those changes are particularly of concern. 6 in 10 parents worry that their child or any of their children might be bullied at some point, and half worry that their children might struggle with anxiety or depression, or that they may have other things happen to them that I won't mention at the moment. The study says that this is something that's just part of the landscape of parenting now, so put your hand back on your heart, either literally or figuratively, and think about what that means to be a parent in this time when we have so much to worry about, not just those regular challenges of parenting, which Johanna spoke so well of, about how our children will turn out and how we will be as parents. With all of this, parents are struggling to find that balance between giving support and setting boundaries for safety. About 68% of millennial parents say they may be overprotective, and 40% worry that they may be giving too much praise. But how can we not give praise in a world where there's so much going on? How can we not want to sow those seeds of joy that our opening hymn talked about? And for the kids as well. The most recent issue of the UU World, which came to my doorstep this week, said that that shows about the changing nature of what we do is so clear. In a sobering statement, the article describes the work of a religious educator, Anguio Lopez Gutierrez McLeod, who has grown a young adult ministry with members in their late teens to early 20s. They gather to get together to deal with issues of grief and spirituality. That is what they decided they wanted to come together for, issues of grief and spirituality. That's very different than what we would have perhaps done together as those communities in the past. And we're so grateful that we have 2 amazing religious educators in this congregation, Indigo Lewis and Marina McGregor, to help guide us through these times. But again, take a breath, touch your heart, think of the heart of the parent that you care most about. The spiritual challenges of raising children today is how to maintain some tiny modicum of equanimity in times when there is so much going on. And we heard about that in the shares from Mary Kelly as well. So many are having to deal with this time of incredible change without the usual level of childcare or outside support. And it's important for them to be seen and to be heard and to be recognized. Think about what the needs are, and then think about what we as a congregation and we as a larger faith need to be doing to better support not only our children and our youth, but also the parents in this kind of family ministry that we need to grow into. We have some ideas and some things we'll be trying anew, including some new afternoon family services next year, because maybe some families just don't want to get up on Sunday mornings after a long week. But I want us to also think about the fact that we don't really know yet what we need to do. Sometimes we know better what we need not to do. Think about all that our parents are holding, and then take a moment and think about what it feels like to get unsolicited advice from people who are not doing the job that you are doing, perhaps not the best thing that we can offer as a people. We need to teach our children well, and we also need to learn from our children, who have a better sense than we do of what this world is in many ways. That's truer now than perhaps it has ever been. And I hope that we will continue to build this place as a sanctuary and a solace for our families and for our children. If you know of a family whose world would be enriched by the idea that someone cares for them, invite them to join in our summer camp, which will be very fun at the end of July, or to our enjoyable summer Sunday programs. You can put the second Sunday of August on your calendars, and throughout the summer, we're going to be giving you the invitation to bring school supplies to Balloon Sunday, because it's not just our parents, it's our teachers who are under-resourced among us as well. What I'm saying is that we need to make our lives part of this deep ask. That's what I called what I'm saying right now. Some of you recognize that that's what I often use to describe what I believe prayer to be, a deep ask for some resource beyond ourselves. And that's what I believe we need to offer to our families. So one more time, put your hand on your heart, and in the spirit of that deep ask, I invite us to close this service with the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, God of many names, whose highest name is love, be with us and all of our gratitude for our children, for our youth, for our parents among us, for the grandparents and great-grandparents who give of their time and resources. We ask in this time that we remember, from the setting of the brightest morning stars to the rising of the moon, that we are our grandparents' prayers and we are also our grandchildren's protectors, that we remember that we can teach our children well, and we also need always to be able to be supported as learners ourselves, to learn in this new and ever-changing world. May we, in our heart of hearts, continue to offer the resources of solace and sanctuary, that place where perhaps a weary soul can take a breath, put down the burdens of parenting, and simply know that they are heard, that they are loved, that their worth and dignity is seen, and that we support, encourage, and cheer them on. All this we ask in the name of all that we can create together. May we be the ones to make it so.
We invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing our closing song. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When we
This morning's benediction is from the parent and teacher educator Barbara Coloroso in her book, Kids Are Worth It, Giving Your Child the Gift of Inner Discipline. Believing that kids are worth it also means believing that our neighbors' kids are worth it. As adults, we need to be willing to make the sacrifices necessary to ensure that all children in our community will be able to have what they need: proper medical treatment, food, clothing and shelter, opportunities to explore, grow, and be nurtured in a safe environment. This is too much for one individual to do, but it is definitely possible if, as a society, we believe that our kids are worth it, worth the time, energy, resources, and commitment necessary. Just saying we believe it is not enough. We must be willing to act on that belief. If we say we are committed to the well-being of our children and their families, then we must be willing to follow through with our time, our energy, our resources, and our practices.